creepy and cool TikToks that will blow your mind. Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's go!
Disclaimer: this video is for entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research, as these clips haven't been fact-checked.
This is how the Japanese drew the first ever European person they met in 1543. Yeah, it was actually two European dudes from Portugal that were on a Chinese pirate ship heading to China that blew off its course because of a storm and landed in Japan for the first time. They ended up showing guns to the local lord who was like 15, and then Japan got obsessed with guns, playing a huge role in the local wars, and now they have an annual gun festival. But why? You see, in 1542, Francisco Zeimoto and Antonio da Mota from Portugal were traders that were on a Chinese pirate ship headed to China. And fun fact, if you watch my Woko pirate video, you'll know that this ship actually belonged to Wang Ji, the pirate lord at the time. However, on their trip to Ningbo, China, they got hit with a typhoon and it blew them off course to Tanegashima. And this moment officially made Antonio de Mota and Francisco Zeimota the first ever recorded official people from Europe to land in Japan in 1543. The two Portuguese traders initially thought that they landed somewhere in China. However, they realized quickly that the people didn't speak Chinese and the local people couldn't understand them. And the Japanese people were equally as bewildered, calling these unshaven foreigners Nanbanjin, or southern barbarians. First communicated not through speaking, but instead drawing Chinese characters in the sand. The Japanese had adopted kanji, or Chinese characters, centuries before this, so they communicated through Chinese characters. The local lord was a 15-year-old kid named Tanegashima Tokitaka, and yes, this is a statue of him holding one of those guns. And he immediately was mesmerized and got the Portuguese traders to demonstrate how to use the guns. And they fired it in front of him, and he immediately bought some. He then gave one of his guns to his swordsmith, Yaita Kimbe Kiyosada, a long one I know, but he then replicated the guns. And within a year, the Japanese started making a bunch of guns. They even named it after the island. They called it the Tanegashima. And the crazier part is this was the Sengoku period, which literally mean warring states or warring countries. And Japan was literally at war. Oda Nobunaga, who was one of the most famous historical figures, probably the most popular historical figure in Japanese history, used gun formations for the first time in Japanese history. And he used it in the Battle of Nagashino against the famously really brutally strong Takeda clan, and he won with Tokugawa Ieyasu. He then later beat out everybody else and unified Japan. And once he unified Japan, he was actually quite welcoming of Portuguese trade, so more Portuguese people ended up coming. Francis Xavier, or Xavier as we know him in Japan, came to bring Christianity to Japan as well, which led to a rebellion and the Tokugawa shogunate kicking them out, and a whole rebellion with hitting Christians. And that's a video for another day, but pretty crazy.
Portuguese and Japanese history is pretty interesting.
It's the meat industry's dirty secret, a way of turning the scraps too small to sell as a premium steak back into a juicy plump eye fillet to sell for a premium price. So clever, you'll never tell. Not even an expert can.
Before you didn't even pick that as a join though, did you?
It doesn't even tear through the joint. Bit hard to tell, isn't it? I've just got some fine diced beef and my special enzyme. I'm just going to mix it up a bit.
Why have we got the masks on?
This is dangerous. See that? Don't breathe that in.
This powder is transglutaminase enzyme, otherwise known as meat glue. Meat glues come in a number of forms, some produced by cultivating bacteria, the others, the primary ingredient comes from the blood plasma of pigs and cattle, specifically the coagulant which causes blood to clot. In the food industry, it has amazing properties.
So just got a little bit here, about a teaspoonful.
Yep.
Just over the top like that. And with our gloves on, of course, we mix it up.
Then roll it in plastic film and refrigerate. 6 hours later, you have a solid piece of meat.
So they could literally mix any kind of meat in there and fuse it together.
It is officially the end of an era. After more than 50 years of family ownership, Tapatio hot sauce officially sold to a private equity firm. The reason why the product was sold will surprise you. Salsa Tapatio was founded in 1971 in California by Jose Luis Saavedra. And earlier this year, Tapatio was sold to Highland Partners, a private investment firm based out of Texas, officially ending 55 years of family ownership. And according to members of the Saavedra family, one unexpected factor that led them to sell the company was the growing popularity of GLP-1 medications. They claim that as more people began taking GLP-1s and focused on higher protein diets, they were looking for ways to add flavor to their foods so that their meals didn't feel repetitive. And since then, the demand for hot sauces like Tapatio has skyrocketed. Now, I don't know if any of this is true, but the family says that this was one of the factors that made now an attractive time to sell the company. Another thing I would like to point out is that the family didn't walk away completely. They retained a minority stake and will continue to have a voice in the company moving forward. For now, there have been no announced changes to the recipe, but after 55 years, the company is entering a new chapter. Let me know how you guys feel about this in the comments.
What's all about the money, man?
All right, welcome back to part 2 of Ozempic Face, the nasty drug. Let's talk about it. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, go back and watch it because this stuff is crazy and you need to know the information in part 1. All right, so we're talking about the Exendin-4 venom protein is what compiles Ozempic. It's what it's formed of. There's no GLP-1 hormone in there. And the black box warning published by the FDA on the box of Ozempic says that it has, you're tripling your risk of developing thyroid cancer called medullary thyroid cancers. It says it right on the box. Oncologists from around the world are calling Dr. Artis, who I got all this information from, and telling him that those who are diagnosed with new cancer after starting Ozempic and Wegovy, we're seeing explosions of breast cancer diagnosis in these people within a year or two. The venom from this Gila monster lizard is published to cause a nerve growth factor, an epidermal nerve growth factor. Those are two oncology terms, cancer terms, for the growth of tumors in the brain and in your organs. That's what Ozempic is. It's literally marketing and propaganda. There is zero GLP-1 hormone inside of Ozempic and Wegovy. It's the venom protein Exendin-4 from the Gila monster lizard, the venom. That's what you're injecting in yourself. Guess what else is also published? That 1 in 5 people are going to develop diabetic retinopathy, meaning your retina detaches from your eyeball and you become permanently blind for the rest of your life. But congratulations, you lost some weight. Also, People magazine published 6 months ago an article called People on Ozempic are now reporting eye rotting disease. That's what they're called. Venom destroys human tissue. It is not a cure for anything. But hey, if you're losing weight, congrats. Do you really believe you're overweight because you're Gila monster venom deficient? I don't think so. And if not, then why are you injecting yourself every day with it? Look, medical doctors have no idea about this stuff. You have to do your own research. The pharmaceutical reps are not telling them this stuff. There is open research. You can read yourself. You can look at the published articles, the published studies. The venom is what's in there. It's crazy. Stop taking Ozempic. Send this to somebody who you know is taking it or is thinking about taking it because they do not need venom in their body. Love you guys. And God loves
You know, I thought it was fake. Then I looked it up.
you too. And Lord, I just pray right now for anybody who's been on Ozempic or taking Ozempic or thinking about it. Lord, place your hand on them and protect them from this nasty, nasty supposed medication. God bless all you guys.
Humans are not the only species that make and play musical instruments.
Ooh.
Palm cockatoos play the drums. These birds usually mate for life, and since they can live for 50 years or more, they tend to be pretty selective about who they choose as a partner. Female palm cockatoos seem to have a thing for drummers, because when males are trying to woo a mate, they use tools to drum on hollow trees as part of their courtship display. And they don't just bang randomly. Scientists analyzed the cockatoos' drumming sequences and found that they follow regular rhythmic patterns similar to beats in human music. Different individuals have their own unique styles too, with each male coming up with his own signature beat. They also make their own drumsticks by selecting an appropriately shaped twig, trimming off the leaves, and cutting it to a particular length. And different males have individual preferences for the length and thickness of the drumsticks that they make, which affects the sound of their drumming. Some males also drum with round seed pods in addition to sticks, and they bite pieces out of the seed pods to modify their shape. All this goes to show that—
So this is insane, guys. This guy's recorded over 10,000 concerts over the course of his life for his own collection, but over the past few years, these volunteers have been working their butts off to get them all online, and now anyone can see them. It all started back in the 1980s when Adam Jacobs was just a teenager who loved music, and since he would go to at least 3 or 4 concerts a week, he eventually decided why not document them. So over the next 30 years, Adam just began recording basically every performer he saw, and actually managed to capture some legendary clips like Nirvana performing at a small club way before they were famous. And it wasn't until 2023, when a documentary was made about Adam, that a volunteer from the Internet Archive just decided to reach out and ask, what if we put your whole collection online for anyone to see? Since a lot of Adam's oldest tapes had actually been disintegrating, he agreed, so Brian Emmerich started this project in 2024 called No Tape Left Behind. It was an incredibly painful process. Brian would pick up around 20 boxes of tapes from Adam's house each month, fix the broken ones, transfer the files, send them to other volunteers to clean up the audio, and still then spend days tracking down each song's name to properly document everything. Over the past 2 years, these volunteers have already managed to upload almost 6,000 concerts, and Brian estimates it'll take at least a few more years to complete the project. And since none of them are making any money from this, there's no real copyright issue, and the files are now all available on the Internet Archive for anyone to see.
Don't the artists have a say in this? Seems illegal to me.
Donald Trump is now backed by the most billionaire gay white men in presidential history. Peter Thiel, Sam Altman, Tim Cook, the Winklevoss twins, all openly gay, all white, all billionaires, and all dumping millions of dollars into Trump's presidency. These men are pushing transhumanism, AI replacing humans, genetic editing, merging flesh with machines, while pretending that they support traditional values. Peter Thiel, for example, the guy who spoke at the Republican National Convention, says he's proud to be gay and proud to be Republican. He's already abandoned America. He bought a $12 million mansion in Argentina. He moved his entire family there. He's enrolled his kids in Argentine school. He's calling it his Plan B.
They know mass surveillance is coming.
Because he doesn't trust the United States to survive. He's got New Zealand citizenship. He's applying for Maltese passport. He's hedging his bets and he's running. He expects you to believe that he's loyal to America, to you. These billionaire gay white men claim to support Republicans. They claim to support Trump. They claim to support conservative values. But let's be crystal clear here. They have zero loyalty to the United States, zero loyalty to working Americans. Their only loyalty is one thing, and that's what makes them more money. Donald Trump, he doesn't care about where the money comes from. He'll take it from gay billionaires, crypto oligarchs, transhumanists, tech bros, foreign oligarchs. It doesn't matter. He'll take your cash. He'll sell you out. That's not conservatism. That's not patriotism. That's a deal. And if Trump is okay with taking money from men who are literally fleeing the country, then he's not a real conservative Republican. He's a businessman who auctions off power to the highest bidder. I'm not MAGA, and I'm not on the left, but I'm not blind. When these men say they support Trump, they're not supporting you. They're buying access. They're buying influence. And when the chips hit the fan, Peter Thiel, he isn't staying in America. He's gone. And that tells you everything you need to know. So stay awake, stay angry, and don't let them sell you a bargain that was never meant for you.
I don't know if you ever heard about the Evian theory.
No.
You never heard about it?
That's the one with the mountain, like the
It's
cool
a mountain,
bottle.
yeah. And it's mad expensive, right?
Yeah.
It's just expensive as like Fiji and all that other bullshit.
Okay.
But the theory goes that Evian is the rich people water. Rich people are trying to gatekeep this water because it's so good for you. It has natural electrolytes. It's literally made naturally in the mountains, fam.
Yeah.
And it's naturally alkaline.
It does taste the best.
And it tastes good. It tastes fresh. Now, this is the healthiest water. All the other water, I watch videos on this shit. Fam, they tested like toxicity, not toxicity, but harmful things that could be in other water, like even spring water and all these other brands, Arrowhead water, all these different brands, they're not necessarily good for you. But the Evian water is one of the few that is. Now, the theory is rich people made it that expensive so that they have their water supply. Okay. And when they go to the store, they know, oh, all these poor people aren't going to buy it, but let's just keep it this high so that we can buy it whenever we're in town. Now, what is Evian backwards? Naive. Right?
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh shit. Like that's on purpose.
That's a theory.
Do you know who owns the water?
What happens when you put perfume on your neck?
You have so much blood flow, lymphatic channels right here. It goes right in. Fragrance. They just use massive amounts of chemicals in the hormone disrupting chemicals going directly into your lymphatic system, directly into your blood system, crossing the blood-brain barrier. You're breathing it into your nose, into your lungs, into the bloodstream. If you want to toxify yourself, the fastest, just keep wearing that cologne and perfume.
When you are getting takeout food, why is eating food out of
Man, I'm in trouble. I like to wear cologne.
black plastic worse even than regular plastic?
That black plastic is made from recycled electronics.
Ew, are you freaking kidding?
And you know what that carries? Flame retardants.
Why should women not get eyelash extensions?
The glue just gets into your system. It has formaldehyde, other chemicals, hormone disrupting chemicals. And I'm not kidding. A woman who worked for me, she actually got just some soap in her eye and it emulsified it. She lost her vision. I believe fasting is the key to slowing the aging process. In a fasted state, your body gets rid of something called senescent cells. Those are cells that live too long and they age you prematurely.
So when you're fasting, what is the first sign that fasting is working?
You break through. 5 days is a sweet spot. It takes people about 3 days to get into max autophagy. Glucose in a fasted state should drop and ketones should rise. When that
Like fasting, no water, no food, 5 days straight. Man.
happens during a fast, you feel great. But if ketones aren't rising fast enough and glucose is dropping, you feel like crap because you don't have enough energy.
So, a guy in Russia has gone viral because he looks identical to Nicholas II. It all started when a barber met this man in a museum who he thought looked pretty similar to Tsar Nicholas II, the last Romanov ruler of Russia. He then invited this guy for a trim at his barber shop and found that there wasn't just an uncanny resemblance, but a spitting image. The barber recorded a video of him trimming the guy's beard and cutting his hair, and this video then went viral in Russia. The man then got invited by a Russian coffee chain called Coffee Mania to come and make an advert, playing Nicholas II as an actor. To be honest, the video does actually kind of look a little bit like AI, but it's not. It is actually this guy. And as someone who is obsessed with the Romanovs, I really cannot get over how much this guy looks like Nicholas II. This guy has now become somewhat of an internet sensation in Russia. But what do you think? Do you think he looks like Nicholas II? Or do you not really see it? Also, sidebar, the barber looks like Rasputin. What do you think? Leave your thoughts in the comments below.
I drank this for 9 weeks, and at the end of 9 weeks, the cancer clinic could not find one thing wrong with me.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You mean pain left your body too?
Everything.
In 9 weeks?
Yes, in 9 weeks' time.
Red clover?
It was red clover, herbaline, and chaparral. 3 herbs, strangely enough, mentioned by 3 prophets from 3 different continents. And Dr. Ian Pierce called me, England's top oncologist, and he said, "I've read about you in the paper, your recovery. Can I come and examine you?" I said, yes. He came and examined me, took blood tests and so on. And he said, "It's unbelievable. Can I have some of the tea? We need to analyze it." And he took it all mixed together as I was drinking it. In a few days' time, he called me and said, "I'm terribly sorry to tell you this, Jason, but this didn't cure any illness at all. All it did is purify your blood to such an extent your natural immunity healed your body." He said, God did not throw us down here and say, "Here's 10,000 fast food restaurants, there's pollution in the air, pollution in the water, have a good time." He gave us something in our body to heal ourselves called the immune system. And in biblical times, any one of those herbs would and did work in different continents to purify the blood so the body healed itself. Nowadays, our blood is so toxic that it took the combined efforts of the 3 herbs mixed together to purify your blood, and your body healed itself. But one thing, and this is the end of the story here.
Oh, it's wonderful.
One thing, he said, an amazing thing, Buddha told the Indian people 2,500 years ago to use herbaline, a special herb. When we analyzed it in the laboratory, we found that herbaline is a catalyst, and it made the other two 27 times stronger. And that's why this worked for you. Every day on radio and TV, I say, terminal cancer was the best thing that ever happened to me.
I could see that. It
Yeah.
changed your life and all those miracles and all these people you're affecting.
Yes, it's marvelous, you know.
Now, you've been to various countries and you wrote a book, The Jason Winter Story.
It's in 9 languages, actually.
9 languages?
They called it Killing Cancer. And when it was published in China, it sold 6 million copies immediately.
Also, in the United States, we haven't heard many of this story. How come?
I don't know. You know, I'm working with Prince Charles on the Federation of Integrative Medicine, and I've been to Washington a few times. We've even got an award from the American Congress.
Really?
We're the only company in the alternative health field to do this. But the public needs to be aware of it.
Several evolutionary crimes have been committed by whales. First of all, they used to have nostrils, like on their faces. Evolution made them move further and further back on their skulls, and now look at them. Speaking of evolution, they came from land. They only went to water because they were hungry and greedy and wanted as much food as possible. And because the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs made the Earth a toxic wasteland, many things died. So whales took this opportunity to colonize the ocean. First came the ridiculous-looking Pakicetus. They were the size of wolves, and they lived near lakes because they loved to eat fish. That was 50 million years ago. Then a few million years later, here comes hairy crocodile nightmare, Ambulocetus. They still walked on land, but they fed in the water. Then Remingtonocetus appeared with their nostrils halfway up their faces, followed by Basilosaurids, who were fully aquatic, but still had back chicken wing limbs that were now useless. Then Dorodon, limbs are now flippers, whale-shaped, 15 feet long, and Lanocetus, no hind limbs, 30 feet long. Eventually, their nostrils moved so far back that they're basically on their backs. Why? Because they are mammals and they still need air to breathe. So basically, the ocean took a weird little deer wolf thing and turned it into a submarine. Thank you.
How come animals today don't evolve?
This pastor burned a baby box to receive unwanted babies at his church, but he never expected to change the lives of over 1,600 babies. So Pastor Lee Jong-ruk in South Korea came up with the idea after seeing so many abandoned babies in hospitals. But he was even more shocked that mothers were abandoning them in dumpsters. So he created the baby box, a hole in the wall of his church where mothers can safely leave their unwanted babies with him instead of on the streets. But his mission wasn't just to save the babies. He tries to give the mothers financial help and counseling. So his kindness helped 30% of babies return back to their original families, while the rest are sent to orphanages. And you can donate to Pastor Lee if you wish.
God bless this man and his mission.
Did y'all hear the story about the 80-year-old Japanese woman who had a severe case of dementia? Couldn't talk for 5 years. Took a mushroom, went to sleep for 19 hours and woke up speaking full sentences? Is they in Japanese? I won't take a mushroom. I'm too nervous. But I wonder if they do the reverse effect, because I got a cousin who won't shut the...
Hey, I heard parasites don't like mushrooms.
One of the most impressive displays for the World Cup this year was made entirely by hand. More than 200 artisans from the state of Jalisco transformed a street in Zapopan into this massive woven artwork celebrating the 7 countries expected to play World Cup matches in Guadalajara. The piece was created by the women of Cielo Tejido, a collective that turns crochet traditions into massive monumental street art. This particular installation hangs over a pedestrian street where visitors can walk underneath thousands of handcrafted textiles, creating the feeling of walking underneath a very colorful sky.
Impressive art.
Guys, this is gonna sound insane, but there is currently a fungus that is spreading from cats to humans that literally eats your skin, and a cat can give it to you just by scratching you. This fungus actually showed up in Brazil back in the 90s, and it lives in a cat's claws, in their saliva, and in any open wounds that they may get. They're saying that you don't even need a scratch from the cat to get it, because they're saying that a sick cat can also sneeze the fungus straight onto you as well. So obviously that's great. Once it gets into your body, it starts as a small bump and then it opens into sores that can travel up your arm or across your face, and in rare cases, it can get into your lungs, your joints, and even the brain. And by the way, they're saying that this version has been more aggressive than the normal one. So that's cool. The only way to get rid of the infection if you get it is to be put on antifungal pills for up to 9 months at a time, and doctors are currently saying that that treatment is starting to fail. This fungus has already spread to Argentina, Paraguay, Chile, and Uruguay, and it just turned up into the UK, and the CDC is saying right now that it's only a matter of time before it's in the US too. 2026. Leave us alone.
Keep your kitties inside.
Did you not believe this when you first heard about this?
Absolutely. Naltrexone is actually an opioid itself. Katie Herzog, a journalist, she wrote a book about using naltrexone for her own drinking problem. She said her parents didn't believe her. They were like, oh yeah, you just take the magic pill.
30 days and we're good.
It did seem too good to be true. They've started prescribing naltrexone for things like sex addiction, gambling addiction, smoking, overeating.
But it's an opioid itself.
Ultimately helps you reduce compulsive behavior, but it's one that doesn't cause an effect. You can do anything. That's why it's a miracle drug.
This is not some random Japanese actor from the 1920s. He's actually Hollywood's first ever male sex symbol. You'd probably think it'd be like a white dude, right? But no, he was actually Japanese, and girls would just throw their fur coats at him. He was so famous, on par with Charlie Chaplin, that he was making $2 million a year. But why? You see, his name was Seishu Hayakawa, and he was born in Japan in Chiba Prefecture in 1886 to a rich samurai family. Growing up, his rich parents wanted him to become a naval officer of the Japanese Navy, but he failed the physical, and he also ruptured his eardrum by going on a dare with his friends to dive to the bottom of a lagoon. Because this is 19th century Japan, and he was born to a samurai family, he decided to commit ritualistic, or seppuku, to restore honor to his family. But luckily, his dog started barking and his father stopped him in the process. After this, he decides to move to the US and tries to fulfill the new wish from his parents for him to become a banker. He made plans to return to Japan, and he stumbled upon Little Tokyo in California. That's where he discovered acting and theater, so he decided to perform in some. When he was noticed by Thomas Ince. This man is called the father of the Western. He basically created the first Hollywood studio. Thomas offered him a contract, and then he later starred in The Cheat, where he was the romantic lead. The movie became an overnight sensation, and it was crazy because it was at a time when interracial relationships were basically illegal, but white girls went crazy for this guy. The story of him stepping out of a limousine, and there was a puddle of water, and he was like, ugh. And then a bunch of white ladies started throwing their fur coats so that his shoes wouldn't get wet. He became so popular, and his fans were mostly white women. And he started his own production company and became super rich. He even had a gold-plated car. And this is where the story goes downhill, because, of course, it's 1920s America. Basically, World War I breaks out, anti-Asian sentiment goes through the roof. His movies stop performing as much, and he decides to leave for Europe. He goes to France and becomes super popular in France. People love him there. He even gets to perform for King George V and Queen Mary. He became not only famous in France, but he became an international star. German audiences knew him, Russian audiences knew him. He was famous all throughout the world. During World War II, he was trapped in France, and he even fought for the French resistance against the Germans. He eventually did come back to America after the war, and he played villains and mostly like Japanese military. He also got nominated for an Academy Award for The Bridge on the River Kwai. This guy basically put Asians on first, before K-pop, and he was erased from history for some reason.
Explaining the iceberg of historical theories, Mont St. Michael. So this is a really crazy castle. Supposedly one night around the year 708, the Archangel Michael appeared to a bishop in a dream. And he said that this archangel ordered him to build a sanctuary in his name at the top of this island. And so he did end up building it. And some believe that this is the area where St. Michael won his victory over the dragon as described in the New Testament book of Revelation. And also there's this painting of Dante's Hell under Mont St. Michael, which is super interesting, as some people think that Dante actually visited this place and it inspired him to create the Divine Comedy from the underground crypts and passageways, which is really interesting. Pre-Columbian Mali contact. So Mali is this country in West Africa, and according to Malian oral tradition and Egyptian records, there was this ruler of the Malian Empire named Mons Musa Abubakari II, who became obsessed with discovering the limits of the Atlantic Ocean. And so in 1311, he gave his throne over to his brother and then set off on this expedition to go as far in the Atlantic as he could with 2,000 ships, which may have been kind of an exaggeration. Mainstream historians think that he was probably lost at sea due to lack of archaeological evidence that he actually made it there, but some people suggest that the Atlantic currents took their ships to the Americas, and one piece of evidence that they use to support this theory is that when Columbus returned to Spain with gold alloy that he got in the Caribbean, the specific gold he got from there had the same chemical composition as the gold that was traded in West Africa at that time. So it's really, wow, maybe? I don't know. Anyways, thank you guys for being deranged and watching these videos. Isn't it great that we live in a world where you like icebergs and I like making icebergs? Thank you guys for 1 million followers on Instagram. If you want to like vote on what icebergs I do next, I have a group chat in there. And if you want to watch some longer stuff on YouTube, I do it right there. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye. I love you.
This man went to hell and says that the Holy Spirit told him something about the movie called The Wizard of Oz. Please take a look at this.
Now, the Holy Spirit spoke to me later on about this hell experience. He said, Franklin, he said, the devil's been at this for a very long time in movies. He said, there's a movie that you love, and in this movie, it has your favorite scene. He says, every time you see this scene, you bust out laughing. And every time the movie comes on TV, you always say, I hope I didn't miss my favorite scene. He said, it's The Wizard of Oz. And I said, huh? He said, you remember that scene when Dorothy walks up to the tree and plucks that apple? And he said, what does the tree do? I said, the tree slaps her hand and says, that's not nice. And he says, every time you see that tree branch go, bah, you bust out laughing. And he says, what did the tree say then? And I said, the tree said, if you wanted an apple, all you had to do was ask. And he says, then what did the trees do? He says, and you bust out laughing at this next thing they do. I said, they turn around and they have these evil faces on their tree trunks, and they start bouncing down there towards them with these evil looks on their tree faces. And he says, then what happens? And he says, he says, you laugh at this, and I think about I laugh, I chuckle. He goes, those trees take their branches and apples, and they start hitting them and chucking them at the apples at them and pegging them with bah, bah. And he says, you sit there and you have tears coming out of your eyes laughing at that scene. He said, Franklin, that came from those trees you saw in hell. He said, the creator of the Wizard of Oz saw what you saw and put that into the Wizard of Oz. And when I thought about those trees after he said that, I said, the way they acted was the same way when I approached them, they acted towards me. He went down a list of movies that I had saw as a child. And he said, the devil is in this one. He put stuff in this one. He put stuff in this one.
Listen, pay attention to the kind of movies that you watch or even expose your children to, because some of these movies are influenced by the demonic.
I've never liked that movie. Now I know why.
Interesting, methylene blue was actually a synthetic dye. It came from rocks back in the 1890s when they were looking for different dyes for different items. They found that they were giving it to soldiers during World War I, and they started getting rid of urinary tract infections and prostate infections. Matter of fact, it killed malaria, and so they started getting a lot of benefits. To make a long story short, they started purifying it down the line, and over the years it turned into chloroquine or hydroxychloroquine, which is the pharmaceutical version of methylene blue. And so the military really liked it, but then, penicillin came along and other things came along, and it started losing its favor. It's just a dye. It's what dyes your pants blue, is what we use for aquariums to clean them up. But methylene blue, when I was using it years ago in shock trauma units, like in an ICU, when someone had a bad brain injury or a cardiac shock, we'd give them IV methylene blue to help with the brain fog and regenerate it. And I started realizing, wow, what is that? And so when I started seeing patients post-COVID that had the brain fog and couldn't put things together, I said, let me try some IV methylene blue from years ago. People would come back, hey, we're feeling better. What? Let's try it again. I'm feeling better. My brain fog's going away. I'd go back to work now. And I started researching it and found out that methylene blue was the only substance that actually can bring oxygen into mitochondria and take all the toxins out of the mitochondria. So every cell in our body has mitochondria in it except for red blood cells. And we use methylene blue, interesting enough. It's still FDA approved in the hospitals for carbon monoxide poisoning and arsenic poisoning because it takes all the toxins out of the body and increases the health of the mitochondria.
Wow. Hey, make sure you do your own research before consuming this, okay?
I don't know if people have heard this. You guys know the Chuck E. Cheese theory?
Wait, break it down.
Can anybody tell me why Chuck E. Cheese?
I've never been to Chuck E. Cheese.
If you look at the slices, why are the slices different shapes? Small, big.
I always thought that was weird.
Okay, you know why? They said when the kids eat the pizza, kids never really finish their pizza at Chuck E. Cheese. They're running around and eating, then they all go home, right? So there's leftover slices. So you know what to do with the leftover slices? They take the slices, put them back in the oven, melt the cheese over again, and bring it back out.
Okay.
That's why they're different.
Oh my God. So that's just like
Allegedly.
That's like mush of everyone else's leftover pizza.
Right.
So that's why the last time I went to Chuck E. Cheese, I got fucking sick.
Because you probably was eating somebody else's pizza.
Right.
That sounds crazy.
They're all different shapes. Like some are like small, some are big. They just take the old slices.
Oh no.
Run them back, put the cheese over it, and then melt it and then bring it out. Because think about it. You're dealing with a bunch of kids, right? They're going to take one bite and then go play.
They never eat the full pizza.
They never eat the full pizza. And that costs them millions of dollars if they're throwing out fresh pizza all the time. So wouldn't that save them or make them a lot of money to do so?
Actually, it would. It saves them.
And then guess who's working in the back anyways? A bunch of teenagers who don't give a shit.
Well, I mean, CEO was on the Epstein files, so at this point, you can't put anything past. He's on the Epstein files.
Right.
But being that he stepped down, if you were just mentioned, you were like, oh, I just took a jet one time. I went to a party. You step down. Unless it's really some shit. You don't want discovery. You don't want to take the whole company down.
Yeah, because if you're current CEO, this is why everybody, right before COVID, everybody stepped down from the CEO positions because they didn't want that heat of, stocks crashing and all this stuff. They're like, oh, I ain't dealing with this.
They keep saying that. They keep saying that the stocks are going to crash. This last file drop, they saying everything's going to crash. Even the Trump administration, they keep saying it. It's like, what's on there? And then Alex Jones came out and said something too. Alex Jones is like, yo, I talked to somebody from the FBI and he's like, you don't want to know what's on this last drop. Like, it's honestly, it's going to fuck everybody up.
Have the money. The Rockefellers have the oil. But the Kennedy family is the sacrificial lamb. They were one of the 13 bloodlines that tried to break the rules and paid the ultimate price. This is the story of the failed coup against the occupation. The Kennedys are more than Irish politicians. They're a high-level bloodline within the 13 families. JFK did the unthinkable. He turned against the script. Through Executive Order 11110, he attempted to strip the Federal Reserve, which is the Rothschilds' primary weapon, of its power to loan the government money at interest. He was trying to give the money back to the people, and in doing so, signed his own death warrant. JFK was fighting bankers, opposing Israel, fighting secret governments. Leaked memos suggest that Kennedy was even about to expose the 1954 treaty with the non-human entities, the one that allows them to abduct us. JFK knew that technology could end poverty and fossil fuel dependence, the very things the Rockefellers and DuPonts used to control you. He demanded Israel shut down the Dimona reactor. He was going to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces to end the occupation. And right after they took him out, the CIA created the term conspiracy theorist. It was intentionally designed to make anybody who knew the truth or questioned the narrative look crazy. They woke. People think the Kennedy curse is bad luck, but it's actually a calculated ritual erasure and liquidation of an entire bloodline. This was a message to the other families. Disobedience equals death. Next, his brother ran for president and killed. Then his son dies in a plane crash, and the deaths don't stop. But the war never ended. Look at the modern board. RFK Jr. is attempting to finish what his family started. And I love that. But the system steered him right into the ultimate political trap. Donald Trump. Understand the theater. Trump is compromised by the Epstein files, so he's currently doing the bidding of Israel, Rothschilds, the Illuminati. He is not the savior. He is controlled opposition designed to divide us and absorb our rebellion before we can do anything about it. You're running out of time. No Kennedy can undo the damage done by JFK's death. The damage can only be undone by the people he was trying to protect. They want you to see the Kennedys as a tragedy, so you stay in a state of grief and fear and confusion. To be Akari is to realize the mission didn't die in Dallas. Kennedys tried to break the cage from the inside. Now it's our turn to break it from the outside. You don't need a political savior to finish what they started. You have the source, you have the truth, and you have the power to revoke consent. My name is Derek. If you like what I'm doing, share this video and follow me for more.
What about Monroe? She knew some things.
Leonore Fini had multiple lovers, lived with two men at the same time, though Salvador Dali insane rejected marriage completely and painted women so powerful that men looked decorative next to them. This was 1930s. Before polyamory even had a name, Leonore was already turning her life into rebellion against how women were supposed to exist. Born in Buenos Aires and raised in a Trieste after her mother kidnapped her away from an abusive father, she grew up disguised as a boy for protection. Later, that obsession with identity masks and power would consume her art completely. When she moved to Paris, the surrealists became fascinated by her almost immediately. Dali adored her, Max Ernst fell for her, Picasso wanted her portrait, but Leonore refused to become anybody's muse. Instead, she painted women as things, predators, queens, mystical creatures, emotionally untouchable beings who seemed to dominate the men around them. And honestly, her real life looked exactly the same. Her apartment was filled with lovers, Persian cats, silks, masks, feathers, costumes, and endless parties with artists and aristocrats. She dressed like she came from another dimension and treated social rules almost like a joke. At the time when women could be still destroyed socially for sexual freedom, Leonore Fini made freedom itself her entire identity. She didn't just paint surrealism, she lived it harder than most of men in the movement ever could. If you also obsess over artistic genius, scandalous lives, and people who completely ignored social rules, follow me.
Here are 3 insane stories of how different saints battled demons. The devil hated Padre Pio because of his prayer life and how many people he brought to Jesus, so he started attacking him on a daily basis. The devil would come to Padre Pio and appear as different people and things. One day, the devil would come as a black cat, and another as a girl with lustful intentions, but Padre Pio would never fall. His last resort was appearing to Padre Pio as the Virgin Mary or Jesus. But Padre Pio noticed something was wrong and was left unfazed. Next is St. Anthony of the Desert, and the devil would come to him at night in the form of wild beasts. They would physically fight him and leave him to the point where he was almost dead. St. Anthony said no man could inflict as much physical pain as the devil did on him. But instead of running away, Anthony stood up to the devil and said, "Nothing can separate me from the Lord." Our final story comes from St. John Vianney, and the devil hated him because he would hear confessions for hours upon hours every single day. One night, as John Vianney was getting ready for bed, the devil seized him by the legs and dragged him around his room. It was so loud that he woke up a sister sleeping in another room. St. John Vianney said the devil did this because he converts many souls to the good God. Let me know in the comments if you guys want a part 2.
Yes, please, part 2.
Urine is a vaccine. That's essentially what it is. That's what it's based on. And if you look at the history, you'll understand what I mean by that. Before it was pee, it was blood. It's blood in your body that goes through your kidneys. Your kidneys are a filtration system. So when you hear the word filter, your kidneys filter it, not of what's bad necessarily, but what the body doesn't need. Urine is primarily made up of water. The second largest ingredient is called urea. After that, it's broken down to enzymes, hormones, minerals, peptides. Urine is not this toxic thing. As a matter of fact, it's the greatest thing to get rid of toxicity. And the reason why I'm saying it's a vaccine is because there is a certain amount of toxicity, but it's been heated up. It is weaker. And when you re-ingest it when you're sick, within hours, you will overcome that sickness. And I speak from experience because whenever I'm feeling bad, take a glass, you drink it. Sounds crazy, but that's a vaccine. Only instead of it going through an injection, which is already a problem because your tonsils, the things that they tell you you don't need, those are your like immune receptors. So imagine everybody knew you can go to your urine and use it as a form of medicine. It is your own perfect medicine that was generated by the laboratory in your own body. Well, pharmaceutical companies would go out of business and they don't want that. So what did they do? They created a campaign, and this was done over the past 100 years, to get people to think that urine is toxic and it is toxic waste.
Earth has almost gone extinct multiple times. We are not special, we are late. The Great Dying was 252 million years ago and is our biggest mass extinction event. Over 90% of life vanished because an insane amount of volcanoes erupted. This made the air poison and the oceans acid. Snowball Earth, the period where the planet froze completely. It was covered in ice from the poles to the equator. Life survived in tiny ponds or pockets of slushy. The oxygen apocalypse, when oxygen used to be toxic. Cyanobacteria flooded the atmosphere with it, and most of life on Earth choked to death. It's formally called the Great Oxidation Event. The Late Devonian extinction. Here the ocean lost oxygen and wiped out almost all marine life. So life moved to land because it was the more logical choice. And from this came the first forests. The dinosaur-killing asteroid released more energy than billions of nuclear bombs. It caused global firestorms, acid rain, and a sun-blocking dust cloud that annihilated 75% of life on Earth. And the late Ordovician Ordovician mass extinction. The planet got icy, which dropped sea levels dramatically. Nearly 85% of marine species died because their world literally drained away. Finally, the Triassic-Jurassic extinction. This one was caused by volcanoes. It ripped Pangea apart. And now we are at the beginning of a new mass extinction called Holocene, except this time it's not volcanoes or asteroids. It's us. Thank you.
This dentist left his practice in the 1930s and spent years traveling to the most remote populations on Earth, not to study teeth, to study what happens to a civilization when it switches to processed foods. His name was Dr. Weston A. Price. What he found should have changed everything. Every traditional population he studied, Swiss villages, Peruvian highlanders, African tribes, Pacific islanders, had virtually no cavities, no crowded teeth, no narrow dental arches, and no chronic disease. They had strong facial structure, wide palates, and upright posture and dense bones. In other words, the natural version of looksmaxing. Then he studied the same populations one generation after the contact with Western processed foods. They had narrower jaws, crowded teeth, forward head posture, increased cavities, increased chronic disease. Within one generation. Not because of their genetics. Their genetics hadn't changed. Their food changed. Price identified the fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K2 as the activators of proper skeletal facial development. He called K2 activator X because he couldn't identify it chemically at the time. Modern research confirmed it decades later. What he documented in 1939 in the book Nutrition and Physical Degeneration is one of the most important books in the history of human health. The food changes the face. The food changed the structure. The structure changed function. The function determines your health. This is the maximum vitality framework. And a dentist proved it with a camera and a microscope in the 1930s. Follow for more high-performance health content built on the research most nutritionists never read.
At this point, it's the Epstein-class billionaires versus us all. This is going on right now in Albania. 300,000 people are taking to the streets in the capital, protesting the illegal purchase of their largest island by these two. I'm sure it's just a coincidence this island they want to turn into a resort for billionaires just so happened to be a Cold War-era bunker with miles and miles of underground tunnels. Keep in mind, this new billionaire paradise island is 20 times larger than Little St. James. This is why the Albanians are rioting. They know that island will only be used for nefarious reasons. We need to take some notes.
Okay, this is just in. Albania has been hiding a secret nuclear program.
This has to be one of the scariest women to ever
Oh man, this is insane.
exist. All Mona Fandey had ever wanted was fame. So when her music career failed, naturally, she turned to witchcraft. Her and her husband were actually quite successful in this business and serviced many elite customers in Malaysia. And in July of 1993, a politician sought the help of Mona and her husband to boost his political career. So as instructed, he arrived at Mona's house around 10 p.m. and was brought to a room where this cleansing ritual would take place. During this ritual, the politician was told to lay face up, close his eyes, and picture money falling from the sky. And while he lays there with his eyes closed, picturing money falling from the sky, an axe does instead. Mona's assistant swings an axe 3 times before finally separating the politician's head from his body. He's then partially skinned and dismembered into 18 precise pieces. Now, after this has taken place,
Man, her smile is creeping the hell out of me.
Mona steals the politician's money and goes on a shopping spree. She buys herself new luxury clothing, a brand new Mercedes-Benz, and a facelift. The politician, on the other hand, is reported missing after not showing up to important business meetings. And a little while later, Mona's assistant is stopped by police on totally unrelated charges, but comes clean to officers, telling them what they had done to this man. The assistant leads authorities to a shed on Mona's property where the politician's remains remains were buried, but they don't find all 18 pieces of him, leaving some to speculate that Mona and her husband ate them. Mona, her husband, and her assistant are all arrested and charged with murder, which carries an automatic death sentence in Malaysia. But that didn't bring her down. For every hearing, Mona showed up in bright, colorful clothing and always had this huge smile on her face. She even signed autographs for crowds gathering outside. She had finally gotten the fame she had always dreamed of. When she was sentenced to death, her response was, quote, "I'm happy with the decision. I want to thank all Malaysians. I love all the people." And just before she was hanged, her last words were, "I will never die."
Everyone's talking about psilocybin for mental health, but that's just half the story. Because tiny sub-psychedelic doses, amounts too small to cause any altered experience, appear to reverse metabolic disease. That's the findings from a new study from the University of Padova, where mice with full-blown metabolic syndrome, obesity, fatty liver, type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, the works, were given daily microdoses of psilocybin for 12 weeks. They were kept on the same terrible diet as the control group throughout, the equivalent of a high-fat Western diet, and the results were pretty remarkable. Body weight dropped, blood sugar normalised, insulin resistance fell by nearly 70%. Liver tissue, which had been reprogrammed into a fat-storing, broken state, returned almost entirely to normal. And surprisingly, this didn't happen through the psychedelic pathway, the 5-HT2A receptor. It worked for a completely separate receptor in the liver, the 5-HT2B receptor. It's not the first study to show that psilocybin has profound metabolic effects. A study from last year at Emory University confirmed that psilocybin also activates cellular longevity pathways throughout the body, extending cell lifespan by up to 57%, even in cells grown in a petri dish with zero connection to a brain or a nervous system. So we have two separate mechanisms that both act via metabolic pathways without the need for a brain. This suggests that psilocybin addresses metabolic function at the level of organelles, receptors, cells, and gene expression simultaneously. In an era of metabolic disease epidemics, with almost no effective treatments for fatty liver disease, and most diabetes drugs only managing symptoms, this is important. The old model said that psychedelics work only in the brain. The emerging model says that they work throughout the entire body, and the evidence is stacking up fast. You can read the full breakdown on my blog by clicking the link in my bio, where you can also sign up to my newsletter, The Spore Report.
Peter Thiel has a secret society called Dialogue, and the names of its members just got released. A Swiss hacktivist was able to get a hold of these names. Dialogue was founded in 2006, has been very, very quiet, very, very hush-hush. They have an annual meeting that costs $16,000 to attend, and someone was able to find that membership list, and it is a wild ride. Now, a lot of it shouldn't surprise you. There's a lot of the elites who run this country and are simultaneously trying to destroy it, but the people who are passing the laws about regulations around things like AI, tech, surveillance, are meeting with the owners and leaders of those industries to use their software. Because why was Tulsi Gabbard attending a meeting with Peter Thiel and the Palantir surveillance software? Some of the names you totally expect, right? Peter Thiel, Tulsi Gabbard, Ted Cruz, Elon Musk. Some of them, though, like Jim Himes, the Democratic representative that is on the Permanent Select Committee for Intelligence, that has been pushing for the FISA 702 to be pushed through, that without any meaningful changes to protect American security and privacy from government overreach, or people like Cory Booker or Wes Moore, who are playing both sides of the field, apparently, but that's not the one that interested me the most, because they have a lot of classes there, like How's Your Sex Life, or Surviving World War III, or Bringing Back Nuclear. This was the one I was interested in the most. One of the talks they gave was Build a Cult, moderated by the founder of the Christian networking site Pray.com. Oh, and megachurch pastor and conservative Christian and raging misogynist and very famous Christian author Rick Warren, also on the list. So the people teaching this How to Build a Cult class are the world's #1 app for daily prayer and faith-based audio content. They are one of the top 5 grossing lifestyle apps in the App Store, teaching elites how to build cults. These are the same people that organized the Pray for the White House to get millions of people to be praying for the president. It's the same people who've been meeting with leaders, teaching them how to build a cult, maybe because they've had practice doing it.
You know, the only difference between a conspiracy theory and truth is 6 months. Someone told me that.
You've probably heard the phrase, an elephant never forgets, but did you know that human-induced trauma made Angola's elephant herds completely reconstruct how they live their lives just to avoid humans at all costs? Nicknamed ghost elephants by conservationists who thought Angola's elephants had gone extinct after successfully avoiding any human documentation for years. Angola endured a brutal civil war from 1975 to 2002, killing over 800,000 people and over 100,000 elephants that were slaughtered for their ivory to fund the conflict. Those who survived would never forget this violence. They became not only largely nocturnal, but experts in avoiding human and technology altogether. The herd-wide switch to living their lives completely after the sun goes down is not natural. It's not instinct. It is a learned behavioral shift triggered by generational trauma from the war. A conservation biologist, Steve Boyce, spent a decade tracking them. In 2024, he finally captured proof of their existence. I highly recommend the documentary made by German filmmaker Werner Herzog on Disney Plus and Hulu, detailing Steve Boyce's unrelentless quest to prove that elephants still existed in Angola.
Elephants are smart, but they're running out of space. Humans are pests.
For the first time ever, athletes are refusing to eat American food. Norway have shipped 1,000 kilograms of rations to the World Cup because they don't trust U.S. groceries. That includes fish, brown cheese, and 6,000 oranges.
Norway didn't just reject U.S. oranges. They avoided petroleum-dyed fruit that never rots. Practically every U.S. orange starts as a green clone, smothered in citrus red number 2, a petroleum dye marked as a human carcinogen. Dipped straight into ammonia baths, fusing coal tar chemistry into every peel. What remains is sprayed with morpholine, a wax binder banned in 31 nations, then gassed with ethylene until every cell is petrochemical. Exposure found baking soda strips 95% of fungicide residue, while unwashed oranges scan cancer-linked imazalil. Comment Exposure to scan safer brands.
Everybody loves genius when it's finished, but nobody talks about what it costs to become that person. Einstein said, "It's a strange thing to be so widely known and yet be so lonely." That line really hits because it exposes the truth behind a lot of great minds. Prince was the same way in a different form. He was obsessive about the work, intensely private, and he was very protective of his creative process. He didn't just want the attention, he wanted control over the art. But that's the part people miss, because for deep thinkers, solitude isn't always emptiness, but it's where the real signal that that person has gets loud. It's where the ideas get clear enough to turn them into something real. So if you need time alone, or you think different, or normal conversations feel shallow sometimes, that doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It just means that your mind needs a different environment to build in. Solitude doesn't create genius by itself, but it does give it room to form.
I think it's so...
I forgot who said it. Something like this: the smartest person is the loneliest person.
Funny that the band with possibly the darkest in all of music history is the Beach Boys. Like, if you have just surface level knowledge of the Beach Boys, greatest hits from the 60s, you probably think that the biggest tragedy that ever happened in their life was like there was a wave once that wasn't like up to par. And then you start digging into the band's history and you immediately have to go to therapy. Like, the Wilson brothers' father, Murray Wilson, was seemingly in competition with Joe Jackson to see who could produce the most traumatized musical family. At some point in his childhood, he hit Brian over the head with a 2x4 and essentially made him deaf in one ear. Brian Wilson then struggles with mental health problems for like the rest of his life. He almost loses his mind completely at some point, just becomes a complete shut-in for years at a time. Meanwhile, his brother Dennis essentially succumbs to addiction before drowning. But of course not before Dennis literally almost gets the entire group whacked by literally Charles Manson, because that's who he's hanging out with. Charles Manson did write a good song for the group though, so all's fair. And then you have like all this other stuff like constant lawsuits, inter-band feuds. Murray Wilson sells the group's catalog for essentially nothing behind their backs, until Mike Love, who's probably the most hated character in the entire Beach Boys story, including Charles Manson, ends up with the legal touring name. John Stamos is a Beach Boy.
What?
But yeah, I think it's so funny that there's so many middle bands that are constantly talking about just, how like depraved the world is. But then you've got the Beach Boys singing about, the beach. And they're the ones actually hanging out with serial killers. Such is life.
In the 1870s, the sluttiest hairstyle you could have was a micro-fringe. In the 1870s, Mabel Gray's face was almost impossible to escape. Born in Ireland in 1850, her image appeared in the windows of every respectable stationer and print shop, sold as collectible photographic cards. She was the most famous courtesan in London at that time. Mabel's photo cards are pretty easy to identify because of her iconic micro-fringe, or as the Victorians would have called it, a lunatic Fringe. An article from 1879 called The Lunatic Fringe wrote, "Of all the positively ugly modes now current, the mode of wearing the hair banged or combed down over the brow and cut square is perhaps the ugliest. It had its origins, if we mistake not, in the demi-monde of Paris, where so many fashions rise." Mabel Grey appears to have been one of the first adopters of the lunatic fringe in Britain, and her celebrity as a courtesan and these photo cards would have helped to spread the lunatic fringe. "It clearly betrays its origins," wrote the Lunatic Fringe article. "It gives to any woman a bold, impudent, hard look, such as comports with the character or absence of character of its originators." This would explain why, in the late 19th century, there is a surprising number of job listings seeking female domestic servants that explain that women with fringes need not apply. A woman that idolized the demi-monde in such a way was seen as an unsuitable woman to have around the house.
Have you ever wondered why female serial killers or women who are serial killers are so rare? Well, that might not actually be true. Just as Deadly, The Psychology of Female Serial Killers by Dr. Marissa Harrison. I recommend it if you want to learn more about women who kill. One of the most interesting things that I read from this book is that female serial killers might not be as rare as we think they are. We just think of serial killers as men like Ted Bundy, for example. And because of that stereotype, women who kill repeatedly tend to go unnoticed.
Yeah, I think they are clever. They don't get caught.
The second thing is that female serial killers act very differently than male serial killers. Women are much
And they're probably not, sexually motivated.
more likely to target people they know, whereas male serial killers are more likely to target people they do not know and be directly, overtly, physically violent, whereas women tend to use poison or medication to harm their victims. Harrison's research found that the large majority of female serial killers work in caregiving or healthcare. So the question isn't why are female serial killers so rare, but more, why is the basis of crime still centered around men and what crimes men commit? We would be much more efficient at catching women who commit crimes if we would decentralize the definition of crimes from men.
I always used to think that Stephen King looked a little bit scary, but I'm glad to know that he used to look a whole lot scary. What's funnier about that photo is that it was used by the University of Maine to announce that one of their proud alumni, Stephen King, had made it big. And this was the photo that they chose.
90% of the population has herpes. Herpes of the skin, eczema. Herpes in your joints, rheumatoid arthritis. Herpes in your central nervous system, lupus. Herpes in your nerves, fibromyalgia. Herpes in your back, sciatica. Herpes in your thyroid, Graves' disease. Herpes in your lymphatic, psoriasis. Herpes as a child, chickenpox. Herpes in your spleen, shingles. You know what? We've been told that we have all these different conditions. And so we use different ways of trying to mediate them or regulate them. And we only think of herpes as being on the lips or in there. We all have herpes. And it comes out in different ways. And it comes out based on stress and emotions based on those organs. That's why herpes of the genitals is shame. There are ways to remediate herpes, and it can be done by taking care of yourself, getting rid of the spike proteins, cleaning your blood, calming your nervous system, cleaning your digestive system, and getting your body out of stress. It's not a lifelong condition like you've been told.
Is herpes parasites?
Have you ever met anyone that you suspect enjoyed torture?
I've met a number of people over the years who enjoyed torture. One of them ended up becoming the director of the CIA. Gina Haspel was a senior counterterrorism official who flew out to the secret site just to sit in on a torture session because it got her rocks off. In the hall, we used to call her Bloody Gina. Can you imagine being a woman known through your career as Bloody Gina because you're such a psychopath that you enjoy watching other people be tortured and humiliated? What kind of person is that? There were others that they would come out of these sessions energized. Woo! USA! That's just not normal. But there were a lot of people like that.
Mexico. We gotta talk. What are these, dude? 26 obsidian spools were found in Mexico City. That is a huge problem because obsidian is glass. Typically, when you work with something like obsidian, you get something that looks kind of like that thing back there. Now, with ancient artifacts, you're going to think of like an arrowhead or a flint knife. They're great for ancient tools because they're brittle and they fracture sharply, but these are claimed to be ear spools. Typically, these would be stone so they don't shatter in your ear. Now, there are two problems that haunt the explanations of ancient history: scale and precision. Ancient Egypt, scale and precision in granite. Ancient China, scale, precision in jade. These things were found buried under pyramids in Tenochtitlan. It was the Venice of America, and now it is Mexico City with no lakes around it. Now we know they had the scale, but now they have the precision to go with it. They are attributed to the Aztecs, but they were found buried with artifacts from all around Mesoamerica. The Aztecs' word for craftsman is Toltecatl, in honor of the Toltec, who were master craftsmen that came before them. Calling these expert crafts would be an understatement. They are less than a millimeter thick, making them translucent. They have almost perfect symmetry in brittle glass uniformly, a consistent wall thickness, and they even did it in rock crystal, which is harder and more brittle than obsidian. In 1970, two researchers at UC Berkeley tried to determine what methods were used to create these. Both said these would be precision artifacts in modern day. How off something can be is called a tolerance. Let's say you try to make a piece of metal perfectly flat. The tolerance on the curved glass exceeds what the human hand can produce on metal flat. This was confirmed by scans that showed something similar to a lathe, a tool that could make straight lines.
Wow.
We'd expect to see a contraption that could do this, maybe not like a machine like we have, or a lot of failed broken ones. We find neither of those, especially when you compare the thickness. All we find are the perfectly finished products of some sort of lost technique. Versadoco is where you go for the full documentary with all of the research on this. That's where you go to get a sweet deal for a few more days on all of my work on this stuff. Sale is precisely timed to when I need a haircut, and you could be the change that I want to see in the length of it.
One of these scariest cold cases was just solved and no one is talking about it. In 1991, Bob Warner went to go visit his wife Cindy at a house she was cleaning, and he walked in to find this scene. Her infant daughter was sitting in her high chair, there was cereal spilled all over the table, but Cindy was nowhere to be found. This is coming from a deep dive I just did on the Heart Starts Pounding podcast on two big cold cases that were just solved, but initially everyone thought Cindy had just run away. That is until her body was found. 3 weeks later, a quail hunter found Cindy's body 30 miles away from where she was last seen. She was nude except for a bra, and she had been strangled to death. But when the coroner took a look at her, they noticed something terrifying about her body. And that is that even though she was found 3 weeks later, she had only been dead for 1 week. She had been kept alive somewhere for 2 weeks. Now, near her body, there was a plastic bag found, and inside there was beer cans as well as adult nudity magazines. DNA was taken from that beer can, but there was never any matches to it until recently, when the DNA was confirmed to be from James Lawhead Jr. Now, James was a serial sex offender who never served full sentences for his crimes. He assaulted an 11-year-old girl and attempted to kill her 70-year-old grandmother, but didn't succeed, and he only served a fraction of the amount of time he was supposed to serve for that crime. And after he was released, Cindy went missing within that same year. Same area where Cindy was found, around the same time, there were other women's bodies being found who appeared to have been kept alive for a long period of time before they were. And so now police are desperately trying to find if any of those crimes matched James. I do a full deep dive on that case as well as other cold cases that were just recently solved in this episode of the Heart Starts Pounding podcast. It's really interesting. We get into the DNA technology and all of that helps solve these cases. So I definitely recommend you check it out.
Evil person. You know, if you commit any crime, you should have to give DNA.
There is your life before you watch Caligula from 1979, and then there is your life after Caligula. Some films depict decadence. Caligula appears to have been swallowed by it. I remember watching the 35mm screening of Caligula at the Prince Charles Cinema in London, and I just could not believe what I was watching. I mean, like, popcorn was actually falling out of my mouth. Malcolm McDowell plays the Emperor Caligula as a man discovering that absolute power is less a political condition than a nervous breakdown with better architecture. What adds to the shock is how weak the weaving of scenes can sometimes be compared to the strength of McDowell's surrounding cast. We got Peter O'Toole, John Gielgud, Helen Mirren. The making of Gossip is practically the movie's second plot. Gore Vidal wrote the original screenplay. Tinto Brass directed, and Penthouse publisher Bob Guccione later became infamous for adding way too much explicit material after principal photography. And the film became a cult classic for all the wrong, fascinating reasons. So, How do you watch Caligula? Not as tasteful history or clean cinema, but as an artifact of excess. A movie about imperial corruption that was itself corrupted by ego, money, licentiousness, authorship, and control. In other words, horribly on theme.
This woman was cheated on by her husband, and this one, and her too. He even admitted it publicly. Arnold Schwarzenegger cheated on Marie Shriver, his wife, a Canadian niece, a respected journalist, with their housekeeper, and had a child with her. Alex Rodriguez cheated on J.Lo. Emily Ratajkowski, public cheating, public humiliation. Princess Diana, her husband, cheated from the very beginning. She said it herself.
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
This woman too. And her, Natalie Portman. Ben Affleck cheated on his wife with a nanny, also very publicly picked apart. Vincent Cassel chose other women over Monica Bellucci. And now the most unhinged one, Stephen Hawking. Stephen freaking Hawking cheated on his wife with his caregiver. All of this shows one simple thing. You can be beautiful, successful, desired, admired by millions, and it can still happen because cheating is always a choice, and the choice says everything about the man who makes it, not about the woman. But here's the part that actually matters. A woman can influence who she chooses. Yes, we never have a 100% guarantee how another person will behave, but learning how to read man, noticing early signs, understanding who you're dealing with, that's a skill you can build. When you know what to look for, you start seeing red flags very early on, and that changes everything. Always remember, half of the success in relationships is your self-worth. The other half is your ability to choose well, to choose a man whose values are solid enough that if something stops working for him, he ends the relationship first and only then moves on.
Lust destroys.
Have you ever wondered why ancient Greek and Roman artworks almost always have curly hair? Aphrodite, Zeus, any depictions of them, and even later Michelangelo's David, they're all curly. I investigated for my podcast We Are Spiraling, and I spoke with a hair archaeologist. It turns out curly hair was considered the most desirable in ancient Greek and Roman culture. That's why you see it everywhere in all the artwork from that era. In the Odyssey, you might remember that Athena transforms Odysseus, and the text says she made the hair grow thick on top of his head and flow down in curls like hyacinth blooms. Flow down in curls like hyacinth blooms is such a beautiful description. I'm Priya Anand. I'm a lifelong journalist. I used to report for places like Bloomberg and BuzzFeed. Now I have a podcast and Substack called We Are Spiraling, where we bring you the stories about curly hair that you didn't know you needed. Follow me for more.
Maybe because they didn't have an straightening iron. I'm joking. Music. This is wild.
Guess in which year do you think a sanitary pad was tested for the first time with real menstrual blood?
1990?
2023.
You're kidding.
A lot of products and services were designed from a male perspective without ever having been properly tested on women. I was like, this is so weird because I'm an educated woman. I've had a very successful career. Why do I know nothing about this?
Yeah.
We are conditioned to kind of trust these institutions that are in our lives, banks, hospitals, lawyers. Then you just realize there's a whole healthcare system that hasn't been designed with women in mind.
All right.
A retired FBI agent is sharing the 3 words that if you hear when you are dating, you need to immediately leave. She talks about even in her own dating life, if she heard these 3 words, she would leave before dessert. This woman was a behavioral analysis. She literally had 23 years in the FBI, thousands of interviews, and has found that these 3 words showed up in men who were going to hurt the women they dated. She started realizing she was hearing these words in dating scenarios, so she went back to her actual interviews as an FBI agent, went through over 200 case files, and 147 of those cases had these 3 words in it. He said every single time it's going to sound like a compliment, but it's not a compliment. The thing she's pointing out is you're not like other girls. They say this because they're separating you from the herd so that you don't compare notes because you're different than the other girls they've dated. Other top one was, I feel like I've known you forever. And this is a huge red flag when said on date 1, because this is trying to force closeness and collapse any boundaries you have, trying to distance yourself until you actually know who this man is. Another big one is nobody gets me like you do. And this one is used to make you feel like you're an exception. You are special. And this woman then tested this out, and sure enough, she went on a date where on minute 6 of the date, he said, you're not like other girls. And then 14 minutes in on her first date with this man, he says, I feel like I've known you for years. And then she heard enough. She paid for her half of the date and left. Her entire point about this being, if they say stuff like you're not like other girls, this is not romance. This is them luring you in, manipulating you so that you feel like you are selected and they want you to feel special. She breaks down the science, the isolation by flattery, the premature intimacy, the exception status. So she warns anyone in the dating scene to listen to these words for the first 3 dates, and that a good man will never pull you away from the people you are close to. And a really dangerous partner is going to pull the people you love away from you. You need to trust the small stuff. The things that you notice by the first few dates and blow off, those are your red flags you should not be ignoring.
Or you know what? I got one. I'm a nice guy. Run.